They say silence comes in two kinds. Some silences wrap around you like a soft, familiar blanket, the kind that settles in after a long day, warm and harmless. But others seep in, like fog, creeping through the cracks, chilling everything. They touch. They erase the warmth from a home until two people who once shared everything forget how to speak at all. Melissa had lived through both. She stood at the kitchen sink, dusk, pressing gently against the window pane. The dishes were already clean, but her hands remained submerged in the warm water, lingering, stalling. The low hum of the dishwasher and the faint murmur of the television in the next room gave the illusion of life. But the truth was quieter. Robert was in there. Her husband, but they hadn't truly shared a room in years. When she married him, Melissa never imagined it would end like this. Not in chaos or fury, but in slow, quiet erosion. The kind that sneaks up over time so gently you don't even want. Realize what you've lost until you wake one day and realize you're a ghost in your own home. And then that night, the voice that cut through the gray. "Hey, Melissa." It was Jordan, her stepson. 22 now, broader than she remembered. Taller, the timbre of his voice had deepened. But there was still something in it, something familiar, unguarded. She turned, dishwater dripping from her hands. He stood in the doorway, crooked belt in one hand, a sheepish grin on his face. "Think I broke this?" he said, holding up the twisted leather. For a moment, she said nothing. It wasn't the request that caught her off guard. It was the ease in his voice, the way he spoke to her like they'd done this before. Like this moment belonged to both of them. "You're a grown man," she said with a smirk, drying her hands. "Can't fix your own belt." He chuckled. "Laugh it up. It's jammed. I tried everything." She reached out, their fingers brushing. As he passed it over a touch that should have meant nothing, but it did. Spock. Brief, unacknowledged. She turned to the buckle, instinctively working it loose. Her fingers pressing against worn leather, her breath shallow. Jordan hovered just behind her, too close. Close enough to feel. With a snap, the buckle gave. His pants shifted slightly at the waist, just enough to expose a flash of skin above his boxers. He fumbled, grabbing them with an awkward laugh. Melissa froze. Her eyes darted away too late. He had already seen the flicker in her gaze, and he wasn't laughing. For a moment, the air between them changed. Not loud, not obvious, but heavy. The kind of weight that whispers instead of screams. Jordan fastened the belt. "Guess it was beyond saving," he muttered. "Yeah," she replied, voice tight. "Looks like it." He lingered, then turned. Walked away. But Melissa didn't return. To the dishes, she stood there, motionless, staring at the tile floor while something inside her beat, slow, uncertain, undeniable. That night, she lay awake. Robert snored beside her, back turned as always, his phone still glowing with some article or email or distraction. He hadn't asked if she wanted to come with him to Charlotte for his conference. He hadn't in years. She stared at the ceiling, Jordan's face rising again in the dark. The way he'd looked at her, the quiet closeness, the feeling that hadn't faded. Over the next few days, she told herself she was imagining it. The way his gaze held a second longer. How his voice lowered ever so slightly when they were alone. The way her own posture shifted when he entered the room. Nothing happened. Nothing had happened. But boundaries only hold when no one tests them. And Jordan was stepping. Not boldly. Not directly. But in the quiet moments. Like when he reached above her one morning to grab a mug, his chest brushing lightly against her back. Or when he wandered into the kitchen barefoot, hair damp from the shower, and asked what she was reading, like he really cared. Melissa began to dread being alone with him. And crave it. Then came the storm. Robert was out of town, gone for 3 nights. He didn't ask if she minded. He assumed she wouldn't. The sky had turned to slate, thunder cracking like the splitting of old bones. Lissa curled up on the couch, blanket draped over her legs, paperback open but unread. The house felt cavernous in the quiet. Then came the footsteps and the scent of chamomile. "I made tea," Jordan said, stepping into the living room, 2 steaming mugs in hand. Melissa blinked, surprised. "You didn't have to." He shrugged. "Felt like it." He handed her a cup. Their fingers touched again, warm ceramic, warmer skin. He sat beside her. Not across, not at a polite distance. Beside her, there was room. He chose not to use it. Melissa took a sip. The tea was calming. Her pulse was not. Another thunderclap. She flinched. "Not a fan of storms?" he asked. She shook her head slightly. "Eyes on the window. It's not the storm, it's the silence. This house feels too quiet when Robert's gone." He didn't look away. "Do you mean the house is quiet, or you are?" Melissa turned to him, startled. He held her gaze. That was the thing about Jordan. He saw things, even the ones she hid. Maybe both. She whispered, and then wordlessly, she lifted the corner of her blanket, an invitation. Small, soft, but real. Jordan hesitated, then slid beneath. They sat like that, side by side, the blanket wrapped around them, the lamplight flickering, storm raging outside. And for the first time in years, Melissa could feel the shape of his presence beside her. The heat of him, the way her own body responded, heart racing, breaths uneven, skin alive in a way she hadn't felt in years. She turned slightly to glance at him and found high sighs already. On hers, neither of them smiled because there was nothing funny about what was happening, only something terrifying and real. The storm outside came in waves, like something ancient remembering how to howl. Thunder rolled over the roof in slow dragging growls, and the windows shook in their frames, like they too were holding back confessions. Under the blanket, Melissa sat, still, her knees drawn close. Fed a cup long forgotten on the side table. Jordan was beside her. Close enough Thatch could feel the heat rising from his skin, the kind of closeness that Matamori feel like touch. Neither of them spoke. They didn't have to. Words would have only broken the illusion. They were still just 2 people on a couch, sharing Tia. Pretending they hadn't noticed the shift in gravity between them, but gravity didn't ask permission. Oh, that's good. Feel the air stretch thin like some mething about to snap. Her pulse had drummed loudly in her ears, matching the beat of the rain on the roof. The Ed chef, the blanket brushed against her armwear, his elbow rested. And though they weren't technically touching, she Sorish could feel every breath he took. Then lightning split the sky and Therum flashed white for a heartbeat. Shegumped, not much. Just a small flinch, but it was enough. "You okay?" Jordan asked. His voice quiet as though the question was meant only for the space between them. She nodded. Just storms. He tilted his head slightly, studying her, the way he always did with too much understanding for someone his age. "I didn't think it's the storm you're afraid of," he said gently. Melissa turned to him. "And what do you think it is?" He didn't answer, not directly. Instead, he reached up. Slowly, so slowly, and brushed a strand of hair from her face, his fingertips grazing her cheek. It was a touch so light it could have been imagined, but she felt it. His fingers lingered. Not boldly, not brazenly, just long enough for her to forget how to breathe. "This is wrong," she whispered. The words barely audibly above the rain. "Then tell me to stop," Jordan said, his voice low and steady. Melissa opened her mouth, but no words came. "Because what do you say when Thepert of you that wants to pull away is already gone?" When the hollow space you've lived in for years finally fills with something warm, even if it's forbidden, she didn't speak. She leaned in. The kiss was soft at first, searching, testing the shape of something that had lived only in silence until now. But it didn't stay soft because years of loneliness don't unravel. Slowly, they burst. And that's what this was. Not calculated, just the breaking of something that had been held too tightly for too long. Jordan's hands found her waist, his touch reverent, not greedy. Melissa's fingers curled into the fabric of his shirt, grounding hers. As her world tilted on its axis, His lips tasted of chamomile and renand. Something that made her heart a triumph. Maybe, or hope. She didn't know how long they stayed like that. Rapidini chata, the storm outside mimicking the one within. She only knew thought in his arms. She felt something she hadn't felt in years. Alive. When they finally pulled apart, breathless and wood-eyed, neither of them moved. Firmament was too delicate, too heavy with meaning. Jordan rested his forehead against hers. "Tell me this wasn't a mistake," he murmured. Melissa closed her eyes. Her heart wanted to say it wasn't. Her mind screamed that it was. "I don't know what this means," she said honestly. His thumb brushed along her jaw. "Then let's figure it out together." The words were simple, but they landed like thunder together. It sounded so easy, so human. The problem was they weren't just two people. They were entangled in a web of years. Aft titles, of family dinners, and wedding photos of Robert. Melissa pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. The weight of what they had done pressed hard against her chest. But guilt didn't feel sharp. It felt quiet, like a shadow settling in the corner of the room. She stood slowly, unsure if her knees would hold. "I need a minute," she said, not looking at him. Jordan nodded. He didn't try to stop her. She walked upstairs alone. The soft sound of her bare feet against the hardwood floors drowned out the rain in the bathroom. She turned it on, the light, and stared at herself in the mirror. Her reflection looked the same, but nothing was. There was no lipstick smeared across her mouth, no flushed cheeks, no scarlet letter. Toe. Woman in her 40s with tired eyes and a mouth that had forgotten how to smile. A woman who had been invisible in her own life for far too long. A woman who had done something unthinkable and somehow terrifyingly didn't regret it. Splashed cold water on her face, hoping it would snap her out of whatever spell she was under. But when she came back downstairs, he was still there, not waiting expectantly, not reaching for her. Just sitting on the couch, elbows on his knees, staring at the cold fireplace. He looked up as she entered. Their eyes met. She didn't speak. Neither. Did he? She sat down across from him this time. "I shouldn't have kissed you," she said finally. His mouth twitched, not in amusement, but in pain. "Do you mean that?" "I mean," she struggled for the words. "I mean, I shouldn't have, but I wanted to. Hannah did once. Did I?" And there it was again. Honesty, quiet, piercing. That clock on the wall ticked loud in thistlelands. Melissa wrapped her arms around herself. "This doesn't end well, Jordan." "Why not?" he asked, not defiantly, but curiously. Because I'm your stepson," he finished shed for her. She nodded. He looked down at his hands. "I'm not a kid. Melissa, I know what this looks like, but I also know how I feel." She didn't interrupt. "I see you," he said. "I've seen you for a long time, and maybe I didn't plan for this to happen. Maybe you didn't either, but I'm not going to pretend it didn't." Melissa felt something crack open inside. Not her heart, her defenses. Jordan stood then, not rushing, just rising like someone who knew when to step back. "I'm going upstairs," he said gently. "But if you ever want to talk or not talk, I'm here." She watched him leave. The storm had begun too. Fade booties, echoes still pulsed in her blood. Melissa curled back into the couch. Alone again, but not in the same way, because now the silence didn't feel like offense. It felt like consequence. The storm had passed. Morning light filtered through gauze curtains, casting thin golden lines across the hardwood floor. It was the kind of quiet that followed thunder. It's the kind that felt suspicious, like the sky had made a decision and was no waiting to see what you would do about it. Melissa sat on the edge of the couch, her knees drawn up under the blanket that still clung to her like a secret. She hadn't moved in over Anhar. Her tea had gone cold on the end table, untouched since the night before. Her hair was tangled, her mind more so cross from her. Jordan sat hunchedford, elbows on his knees, his eyes not on her, but on the floor between them, as if the space that now separated them was suddenly sacred. No one had said a word, because once the storm goes quiet, what's left is the weight of what's washed away. Melissa broke the isolence first, her voice from disuse. It should have stopped us. The words fell like a stone into still water. Jordan didn't move, didn't blink, just sat with him. "Do you wish you had?" he asked. Finally, she looked at him. Looked at the man he had become, tall, composed, kinded. A man who had seen her when no one else had. A man she had kissed like Stbin. Drowning? No, she whispered. But that doesn't make it right. Jordan's jaw clenched, but high sighs softened. Right and wrong stopped buying, clear the moment we stopped pretending. Nothing was happening. Melissa exhaled slowly. "We crossed a line." "We didn't just cross it," he said. "We stood at the edge and chose to step." His voice wasn't angry. It just was, and that was the hardest part. He wasn't trying to convince her of anything. He wasn't making promises. He was just standing in his truth and offering her the space toasted in hers. "I have a husband," she said, the words brittle. Jordan looked up. "A husband who doesn't see you. A husband who lets you carry this house, this life, this loneliness alone." Melissa blinked, tears suddenly hot at the corners of her eyes. "Jordan, I'm not saying this is easy." He continued quieter now. "But pretending you're not invisible in your own marriage, that's not easy either." His words weren't nibs. They were mirrors. And Melissa didn't have the strength to keep looking into them. She turned away, gripping the blanket tighter around her. Her heart was a mess. Grief and desire and guilt coiling around each other like vines. "You think this is simple?" she said. "That could just be, I don't think it's simple at all," he replied. "I just think it's honest." Honest. That word again. She stood walking toward the kitchen, more for space than anything. The sink was empty. The counters were clean, and yet she hovered there like something needed doing. He followed her slowly, not intruding, just present. "Did you start seeing me like this?" She ticked quietly, her back still turned. There was a pause. "Then when you stopped buying seen," she closed her eyes. "I'd watch you," he said, "in the mornings. Sitting by the window with your coffee, your book open, but never turning pages. I watched you shrink over the years, even though your laugh was still loud when it came. You were still beautiful, still warm. But you were fading." Melissa lined her palms against the countertop, steadying herself. "And every time I saw it, I hated him for letting it happen." She turned, then slowly meeting high sighs. "You hated your father." "I pitied him," Jordan said, "for having something most men spend their lives chasing unnod, even realizing it was slipping through his fingers." She didn't respond. Couldn't he stepped closer? Just a little. Not enough to touch. Just to not be near. "I'm not asking you to run away with me," he said. "I'm not even asking you to stay." "Then what are you asking?" He hesitated. "To not pretend. To not lie to yourself about what last night was." Melissa let out a shaky breath. "What was it, truth?" he said. "And maybe the beginning of something. Or maybe just the one moment that finally reminded you the Tor's still alive." The floor creaked under her bare feet as she turned away again. Jordan didn't press. Stead he walked to the door, pausing with his hand on the frame. "I'm going out. For a bit," he said, "to give you space." "Shadon, turn around. Tell Meza my thing before I go." She nodded once, barely perceptible. "If it were just us, no titles, no history, no one else in the world, would you still be afraid?" Melissa's throat tightened, and things where it came before her mind could censor it. Oh, he waited a beat. Then he nodded ons like that was enough. "I'll wait," Hesed gently, and then he was gone. The house was too quiet after that, but this time the silence wasn't lonely. It was contemplative, heavy, necessary. Melissa walked slowly through each room, like it belonged to someone else. Like she was visiting a version of her life that no longer fit. The wedding photo on thrall, the mail stacked on the entry to bowl. The throw pillows she'd bought 5 years ago because Robert didn't want new ones. Everything had meaning, and none of it felt like hers. She ended up in the bathroom again, staring at herself in the mirror. This time she didn't see guilt. She saw a woman on the edge, AF becoming. She didn't know what would come next. She didn't know if she'd tell Robert or Jordan or herself. But for the first time in years, she didn't feel numb. She felt like fire. It took Melissa the entire day to say. Nothing she cooked, even though no one washing agree. She vacuumed the rug, rearranged fruit bowl, folded dish towels in her perfect squares. None of it neato-ing. It was her way of keeping thistleants from swallowing her whole. Jordan didn't come back until just before dusk. She heard the door open softly. Therasol of a jacket being hung the subtle shift in the air when someone else is in the room again. Melissa didn't move. She sat at the kitchen table with a cup of black coffee that had long gone cold, staring at the grain of the wood like Ethel dancers. Jordan didn't speak. He simply sat across from her. Its presence wasn't demanding. It never had been, just still present, waiting. I thought about everything you said, Shabagan. He nodded once. I don't regret it, she said. Last night, I went to Beverly. Clear about that. Something flickered in his eyes. Relief, gratitude, maybe both. But I also can't pretend the world around us doesn't exist. I know, I've lived a quiet life, she said. Not upbeat, not miserable, just quiet. Thickened, where every choice you make is about avoiding disruption, keeping things steady, polished, acceptable. The rim of her mug with a finger. And then in one night, I remembered what he's like to feel seen, to be touched, like I mattered. Not because someone had toe, but because they couldn't not. Jordan exhaled softly. Like the truth of that settled into him, too, but feeling something real doesn't always make it right, she continued. I'm not asking you to break your life in half for me, he said. I'm asking if you want something different, something real. Melissa looked at him, really looked. She saw not just the man who had made her feel beautiful again, but the boy who had once helped her carry groceries up the driveway. The teenager who asked for advice on his college essay, the young man who somehow understood her better than the one who shared her bed. I don't know, she said. And for once, that answer didn't feel like a failure. It felt honest. I need time. Jordan nodded again slowly, like he'd expected thought all along. I'm not going anywhere, he said gently. Even if this doesn't turn into anything, even if it ends right here, I'll still be someone who saw you. A tear slipped down her cheek. She could catch it. She wiped it quickly, embarrassed. Don't, Jordan said. Don't hide that. Melissa took a breath. You make it hard to forget. Maybe you're not meant to. They're wassailants again, but this one was different. Not heavy, not expectant, just peaceful. After a while, Melissastood walked to the window. Outside, the sun was slipping behind Venibors. Roofline, painting the sky in soft golds and bruised. Lavender Thuand had quieted. The trees no longer bent beneath the storm. Behind her, Jordan rose to leave. I'm going to go stay at Grant's for a while, he said, his voice light but steady. Give you space, let you think. You've earned that, Mac. She turned to face him. Thank you, she said. He hesitated at Theater Way. Then just promise me one thing. What? That whatever you decide, you do it for you. Not because it's expected, not because it's neat or acceptable, just because it's true. Melissa nodded. Then he was gone. That night, the house felt still but not lonely. She slept with the window cracked open, letting in the night air, the scent of wet earth. The distant hum of traffic, the sound of a world still turning. And for the first time in a long while, she dreamed without fear, not of escape, not of consequence. Boot off, something gentle. A porch swing, a cup of coffee with no clock, watching Eamon's hand, not heavy or possessive, but steady. Reaching for hers beneath Themernane's sun. She didn't know if that hand would be Jordan's, but she knew one thing. She would no longer settle for Aleph, where she disappeared inside of it. Because love, even the forbidden kind, is a way of reminding you what you deserve, even if it only visits. Once, I've lived inside silence. I've lived ever long to be seen, not just looked at. This story was for you, because sometimes the most complicated choices are the ones that finally bring you home to yourself. Asterisk, thanks for listening. See you in next one.